Creative Studies is sponsored by a grant from the Off-World Foundation. A new life awaits you in the Off-World colonies, the chance to begin again in a golden land of opportunity and adventure. To learn more about joining this exclusive community, please visit offworld.vip.
Quiet please, quiet please. Creative Studies is in session. Creative Studies. Studying is different in the 21st century. Creative Studies with Jeffrey Colon. Study Group on Creative Studies.
So, why did we decide to build this site called Posted.Careers? What got us involved in all of this?
I'd been kicking around ideas, and we were kicking around ideas with George over lunch. I got a very excited phone call from George on a Saturday morning. He was like, "Hey, I have this idea for this job thing, and what do we think?" And I was like, my role in all of this is the builder. So, I was like, yeah, I think I could do that. I think I could figure that out. So part platform, part newsletter, part social outreach, and cobbling the data sources together and finding the right platforms. That was a really interesting problem to solve, but it really started from a collaboration of, we saw in the community that a lot of our friends were experiencing a lot of trouble in the job market, and we just felt really terrible for them. So it came out of it. It kind of grew out of a place of concern and love for our fellow marketers out there in the agency world.
George, how about you? What inspired you to build this?
I think it's definitely that, right? There's a vibe about what's going on in the marketplace and what we're feeling. And I also think it's how we all came together, right? I was introduced to Chuck by a mutual friend because we're both entrepreneurial, we're both small business owners, micro agency owners. But that introduction came from the sense of everyone's trying to figure out what the next thing is, because I think there's just a general lack of stability that we're all feeling. And it's the same as how you and I, Jeff, how we met, right? Introduced by that same mutual friend, grabbed a coffee while we were in Seattle, started to go like, hey, here's what I do, here's what you do, how can we do stuff together? And I think it's exactly that, like three entrepreneurial folks, like-minded in the terms of being disruptive to the marketplace, finding ways to get things done. I think we all share a lot of the same qualities that any small business owner does, which is you see a problem and you're just running off to fix it. I would venture that all three of us, probably why we left big agencies at one point in our careers, was also because you guys, there's a better way to do this. There's a faster way to do this. There's a more efficient, effective way to do this. And it doesn't have to be so complicated. And you add that feeling that we're already having and the kind of people that we're having to exactly what Chuck described. Like, you're looking around, we're reading LinkedIn, and like, just, it's breaking my heart at times, right? And you, Jeff, actually said something really interesting at one point. There was a point in our careers when the economy was flush and you saw someone out of work and you said, oh man, that sucks. He's a really nice guy, right? Or like, she's really nice. This sucks. And then in probably the last 18 to 24 months, there's been a sense of, you see someone out of work and you go, man, that person's really good. Why are they out of work?
That's right.
right? And that I think was like a seminal shift where you went from it wasn't the person, they're not over their head. What's going on in the marketplace where it's either like clients are tightening the screws, opportunities are disappearing. This isn't a political commentary one way or the other, but like there's instability right now, regardless of what your politics are. We can all agree that it feels very shaky and very unstable.
Yeah.
And I think the more we all started digging into this, there were bits and pieces of conversations we were having. Chuck and I were having conversations about like, how do we use AI to make our businesses better as small agency owners? And we kind of kept exploring like what we could do. We're having those conversations. You and I were having a conversation about the newsletter you're doing and the newsletter that I used to do for Untapped, right? Which was like a trends newsletter. And we were like, okay, how can we do a newsletter together? And I think there was just sort of like a light bulb moment, probably trolling LinkedIn and getting depressed, honestly. Where that's that call I made to Chuck where I'm like, am I nuts? Like, could this be a thing? And it just like, I think I got that validation from Chuck and he's like, I can build this.
Yeah.
And
Let's
off to the
yeah.
race.
Let's talk about you brought up the term landscape or system. How does the current landscape tie into Posted? Like, how is Posted different from the other solutions that are out there based on this current sort of landscape we're in, where it is taking a long time for many people to find a job, and certain sectors like marketing, it's really been brutally hit.
We took the viewpoint that the extra layers that sites typically put on top of the search process, where you're landing on their search results page, you're entering through their application page, so there are multiple branded layers on top of the entire process. And our point of view is strip away all that stuff, get you the listings as quickly as possible so you can jump on them. And then from there, you go directly to the listing on the ATS system. So we've cut away all the stuff. I don't know how what the rating on this podcast is, but we've cut away all the stuff, and we get you straight to the application on the native system that it was published on. So it gives you direct line instead of going into the void of LinkedIn or any other job site. And that was really in response to the fact that none of us have ever heard of anybody actually getting a job through LinkedIn. Like, if you hit apply, you're kind of going into the void, and we wanted to kind of remove that black box section and just go straight to the listing.
I mean,
yeah, George. I mean, touch on that a bit, especially on nobody finding a job through LinkedIn.
I mean, I'm cracking up about it because it's only funny because it's true, right? It's painfully funny. It's painfully funny at this point. And I think when you say landscape, there's a couple parts to that question that we can tackle. The first one is the landscape in terms of what we're all living in, right? All of us are having conversations talking about, like, we're seeing people applying for gigs on LinkedIn. We're seeing them come up over and over again, and it's ghost jobs. I think we had one conversation, like, I keep the open to work thing on in case like a recruiter gives me a call. Who knows? You don't want to ever close the door to an opportunity. But what they send me, there's never a role that I look at and go, oh, that's me. That's the right one for me. Or if I did, I'll hit apply and I'll look at it and I'll get that classic, you are the 467th person to apply to this. Like, thanks. Why'd I get out of bed today? And then you read some recruiter talking about, hey, why don't you guys take the time to like personalize your cover letter? Because it takes 168 applications on average right now to get a job. Those are the stats that are floating around, right? You wonder why I'm not personalizing a cover letter? Because you're ripping them out like that, So there's just that general frustration about all of it. You're talking about the landscape, and it's like, we're in this just like perfect shitstorm of like depressing for the job applicant, for the job seeker, right? I think the more we dig into this, the more we realize it's like, it's taking longer than ever to find a job. An average of 4 to 6 weeks longer than it did a couple of years ago. So you're out of work for longer. The unemployment rate is going up. and our tenure at jobs is getting shorter and shorter, right? Like I talked about this recently, and it's just like, it's not the work, it's just always keeping your head on a swivel. Like at any given point, like if you're in a firm and you're working for somebody, you're always wondering when you're going to get downsized. Are you going to be the low performer at Meta, right? You know, and I'm sure like those headlines didn't help. Just constantly seeing like people going like, so and so is not a low performer. Like this is floating through my LinkedIn, right? And so if you're always scared you're going to lose your job, and we're all ex-agency guys, so we've known for years, like the first thing to go, there's no hardware to sell. You know, you didn't like slow down the production line. You just like, sorry, there go these people who made X amount. And let's talk about the elephant in the room. It's like, who are you in an agency over 40 unless your name's on the door at a certain point?
That's right.
Yeah, 100%.
We're all of a certain age where like, what was that article that just recently came out about like, I think we all must have gotten forwarded that article about like Gen X and our prime earning years, and about like the creative industries not panning out to be the thing that they thought. God, and let's not even talk about like the swirl of like everyone being told like AI is going to replace you, you know, and either some people are telling me really optimistically about we're going to use AI and this is how we're going to reduce fees for like our clients, etc., and we're going to basically cut out like all the designers, and you're not going to need to like ever go shoot a movie again. Hollywood can be done completely with AI, you know. To the other side of it, like why wouldn't you be nervous about what's going on?
Yeah, it's the perfect storm of structural disruption in our business, but also seemingly structural decline as well, where, you know, the holding companies are going through just sameness, where you can't tell any of the output apart. And you know, I think the small agencies are about to have a moment, hopefully. But those mid-market agencies are really feeling the pain because, you know, the holding codes are having to go down and the small agencies are able to go up, and the guys in the middle are really stuck. So,
Yeah.
in terms of just like expansion of our business, all the dollars are being sucked up by 5 media companies, and there's very little left over for, you know, the traditional advertising agencies to you know, get dollar share.
Yeah.
All bragging about how they're doing it with less people.
Yeah.
S4 is out there just like 100%. We're going to do all the versioning with AI. And if you work at this firm, you're sitting there going, Sir Martin, thanks for help letting me train my replacement, which is just another LLM. Like, come on.
Let's touch on AI for a second, specifically in terms of how we've used it to build Posted. We use it, we're upfront about that, but how have we differentiated how we use it? You know, is Posted just going to be another AI service or app or community that ultimately is, you know, less human feeling, or, you know, how are we approaching it that's a little different?
Yeah, we're using it very lightly at the moment, where we're just using it to kind of clean up some of the listings. If like if a city is missing or job title is ambiguous, or you know, there's not a lot of salary data on the listings that we get, which is kind of a bummer. So we're looking at data sources for that. But yeah, I mean, we're using it very lightly in an extremely, I guess, the structured way, where we're feeding it a blob of text and asking it for a very strict JSON object coming out of the other side, and we just pump that back into the database and work the rest from there. So it's pretty light. I mean, we're not using it heavily. We're not even using it to scrape the data. Those are pretty old technologies that we're using to get that.
Do you think there's a place for our, you know, our what we're building here in this world where every single day we're just over inundated with people talking about, hey, I have the latest, you know, vibe coded AI solution. You know, do you think there's, you know, a place for what we're building, which is a little bit more human, a little bit more humane, but also a little, a little more underground than what some of the other, big solutions are when it comes to finding a job.
I think absolutely, right? The word that jumps out when Chuck's talking is strictly, right? Like, there is a very specific use case for how we're using AI. It is a tool to do something to save you time, energy, and labor, right? It is not a replacement for anything.
Yeah.
We're not doing something that anyone else wouldn't get up and do. The biggest reason and why this is valuable for us, I think, and for any of our subscribers, is that the biggest change to the landscape now is technology has made the ability to apply for jobs just so democratized, right? We all have access to the same listings, no matter where we live, anywhere in the world. Kid in India, lady in China, guy in the Philippines could be applying for the same job that I'm applying for in LA while I live in New York, right? Like, everyone posts them. And so you're out and you're looking. And the problem is now those ATS systems are in place and they're just getting so many applications. It's been borne out time and time again. It actually is important to be one of the first people to apply for a job, because otherwise you just don't even make it through the ATS system. People just get inundated at that point. So either are you going to be the person who gets up at 3 a.m. every morning and starts searching like the bookmark 108 companies that you want to work for and look through their posting and careers page? Or are you going to pay the $1 a month that we're asking for to do this? And this is like, Chuck's laughing because this has been a big thing like we've been hot on for a long time. It's like, we're not doing this to get wealthy. We're doing this because it's something that we wish someone had done, right? And like, how do you keep it to the most reasonable level possible? But so to answer your question, is like, is there a humane way to do it? It's like, the humane way to do it is to create and utilize an AI that serves humanity, right? And I think all too often people get excited about building something for this because you can, and they're building it to replace people. And we actually were looking around going like, where do we need help? Where do our friends need help? How can we help?
Yeah.
And Chuck, like mad scientist, is like, hold on, I got this. Give me a second, like back in the lab.
Well, I would say actually the biggest use of AI on the entire thing is the programming assistance, because Python is not my strongest language, and the coding assistance in Python through the IDE is amazing. It's definitely upskilled my code ability. I act more as the product manager, and I ask it to create a function that does X, Y, Z, and okay, I have to correct it along the way, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely accelerated our time to launch for sure. It hasn't created anything that I wouldn't have been able to do on my own. It's just the speed in which you can iterate is way faster.
Yeah.
So that's been a great use case. And I think to, echo what George said, like understanding like the human angles that we could introduce using these tools, I think is definitely probably the goal, because I think there's amazing unlocks using these technologies to further human development. I just get a little hinky when, it's starting to replace the human element.
Walk me through why I should subscribe to this. I'm a listener or a viewer to this podcast right now, and let's say I'm not a subscriber to it. Why should I subscribe to this service? What am I going to get that's a little different from anything else that's out there at the moment?
I think it's what you're not going to get. I think it's really about what you're not going to get. I think in early conversations we had, all of this was born out of the frustration of what you were having to wade through to get to things, right? I got to pay $80 for Sales Navigator on LinkedIn. Am I actually getting a job? No. I gotta sign up for like your Substack to actually get the leads that you're dangling in front of me. Read your newsletter, which there's some great newsletters out there. I'm not like holding it against, but like everything was being dangled in front of us in exchange for something. Got to watch those ads, and yes, I appreciate the irony of me making that that barb. And I think at a certain point we were just like, God, just give me the damn leads. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with all the other fluff. And then it's a classic pricing exercise of just like, okay, where's the pain point for it? And the conversation amongst ourselves, which again goes back to that, like, we're not doing this to get wealthy. We were doing this to help people. It's like, what's the amount that we need to be able to just keep this thing going, and like the nominal hosting costs, and like just be able to spend some time, effort, and energy on this away from our families and give up some of our daily work. And we hit on like $1 a month is all it would really take from each subscriber to be able to give them something that could be potentially tremendously useful for them.
And to build on that, we're only charging the buck for the filtered version by discipline. So you can subscribe for free and you'll get the whole list every morning as the digest. And then you can dig through all the listings on your own. But the dollar gives you a strategy list instantly, or creative, or copywriting, or media. Like we've segmented the jobs into the various disciplines so we can supply those newsletters on a daily basis as well. And that's $1.
Do you see anything evolving beyond just the fresh jobs that one gets to their inbox? Do you think there'll be an expansion into, a community element or curation of some interesting things people should read?
I would love to see community, real community. We've talked a lot about like a Reddit-like experience. I have, and I think I've been pretty adamant about this, that I'm not interested in a new content creation platform. I think LinkedIn has completely lost the script where it's corporate Facebook and that's all it's good for, and hats off to the content creators, but I don't feel like doing that. I think building real community around talking about companies, talking about different disciplines, talking about the shifts in the market, and lots of other topics that just people in the industry and other industries could talk about. I think expanding into other industries that are close to marketing but maybe not necessarily fit within the agency or marketing framework, and then also introducing new tools as well. But yeah, we have a lot of ideas, and it's just going to take a little bit of time because this is not our primary focus.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's also being responsive to where we see the market going, right? The way a lot of the conversations we've all had is around how is work changing for people today, right? And, I think there was that dream at one point that everyone's going to wake up every morning and you're going to look at your screen and you're going to go, hey, here's a list of freelance jobs that I'm going to be able to jump on, right? And then you're just going to pick and choose the one that you want, and you're going to go off and you're going to spend a day doing what you love and what you're really good at, right? And I think that was the dream that Silicon Valley sold us. Like the gig economy, freelance economy at its best. And in fact, what it's actually turning into is much more of sort of like waking up in the morning and going, God, am I the first one to respond to that from a labor pool? And it's feeling a lot more like lining up for manual labor and hoping you get picked for the job that day so you can jump in the back of the truck, right? I don't say that lightly. That's the childhood I grew up with, right? We were refugees in this country. I know what that's like. And you're hoping to get work. And I think that's the part where you're just kind of like, okay. And if that's how the landscape's changing, where it's gone from sort of a freelance fantasy to more of a DoorDash model of the gig economy, where like we're all waiting out in front of Chick-fil-A hoping to be the one to take that first order, and it's like, oh, you need a positioning? I got you, right? You need content? I'll build you a video, and that's what I see happening more and more, where like we're just like so many competitors out there, individual solopreneurs trying to get this thing. Like the advantages that the three of us have are, we've been at this for a while. Like I hung my own shingle 10 years ago, so there's at least some credibility and reputation in the marketplace. But I'd shudder to think what would happen if I had to do this tomorrow, right?
I would rather be an Uber driver than trying to find work on Upwork right now. I mean, at
yes.
least an Uber driver has transparency into, the volume of rides and, demand and things like that. The fact that I think to build on something that George said, the over monetization that's happened for job seekers on the full-time and part-time end of things has gotten just way out of control. Like the fact that you need to pay, what is it, $80 to be on LinkedIn Professional or whatever they call it.
LinkedIn Premium. It's about 80 or $90 a month.
When we've heard anecdotal evidence that premium members actually are so crowded that it's better to not have premium because you have more visibility on the resume list, or you have sites like Upwork, which maybe you need to blur out these names. I don't know, so I don't get in trouble. But like they're charging people to apply for freelance jobs. Like, what are we even talking about when you need to put down real money, like $10-20 to apply for a freelance position? It's just gotten way out of control.
Right?
I would agree.
And you might not even get.
You might not even hear, the person might not even read the proposal that you paid to submit. That's
right. That's right. I think that's the roughest part, is you put in something that there's just no, to your point, Chuck, there's just no transparency on where most of it goes. It just ends up in this ether somewhere that you're like, okay, spending a lot of money to do this and really getting not much return on investment.
Yeah, I'm all for making money. I mean, I'm a small agency owner myself, but it's not about, there's a fine line between providing a service of value and taking advantage of people. And I think the job search and freelance search market has firmly gone into taking advantage while providing almost no value.
We're all marketers in different ways, which is why we went down the path of really showcasing marketing jobs on Posted. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about that and that, that vertical. Why that vertical, and, are there plans to expand into other verticals? And if so, what are we thinking?
And we started there because that's us, right? Like, we talk about the humanitarian pain point, like looking around and seeing our friends and people we know looking for roles, people in like their mid, late 40s, like all of a sudden finding themselves like out looking for a role for the first time in years, or people who haven't been able to catch on in a few years. So it's just right in front of us. And I think within that, there was also, if there was a proving ground for doing this, it was the space that we knew. We know the titles, we know the roles, we know the bands, we're familiar with it. So it was a comfortable place to like test this out and frankly, to help our friends, right? The plan is to then roll out across every eventual category, because the whole nature of utilizing the technology to find this, to find the posts, to get them to you first thing in the morning, is category agnostic, right? We're just doing it in a very, I think we want to do it in a very conventional, responsible, sort of thoughtful way, where we're trying a category at a time as we figure it out. And it's like, the next one we're looking at is potentially like operations and human resources. For me, there's a certain irony that like HR people are getting hit so hard in terms of like looking for roles, right? But it's like
100%.
I just connected with someone I consider like a very good friend, who was a recruiter that helped me in the early stages of my career, and consolidations, constrictions, and all those things, and everything that we're talking about in the marketplace is happening in her category now, and so they're trying to figure out like, okay, what's the next thing you do when like you've built a job and a skill set and a role that is arguably being contracted, whether by technology or the landscape or the economy itself, right? Like, you're not recruiting when there's just less jobs.
Yeah.
So, and then I think one of the earlier questions you talked about beyond this is like, what are the tools that you go into eventually? And I think as we start to see what this new way of working is, where everyone's got a main thing, a side thing, the backup thing, the hedge thing, and the forward-thinking idea on top of that may let you escape from those other four things. Like the landscape in terms of what we need is also going to change in terms of tools, right? Every single person should have an LLC or S corp on their own right now already. And God, if you don't, go open one, because you'll be able to utilize it for something else that you're doing on top of this. Whether it's like you're baking, you're a tailor, an author, like any one of those things. But then there's a slew of support that comes with it that we'd love to be able to help people with, is like finding the right bookkeeper, helping you figure out your taxes moving forward, and not like a TurboTax form, and, but actually that service that may connect you with it. Insurance, like the minute you're not under an employer's umbrella, and for some people, even when you still are under an employer's umbrella, the insurance isn't as good as it was years ago, right? Or the cost for it is up. What I pay for a month in family insurance now is what I paid for a semester of college tuition.
Yeah. So it's skyrocketed. Yeah.
So, and now imagine like you're out there and you're doing like 2 gigs, and then you're trying to figure out, when do I have time to do some of these other services that I need? Like, this is how the landscape is changing for people and how life has to change. And then God forbid within that, you find a time to like be a parent, date, have a hobby, exercise, sleep, just sleep, people. So, I mean, that's where I think eventually this goes, right? Is like keeping it very strict and very pure and very focused on being a utility. We're not trying to be all things to all people. There's room for like all these things in this world. Posted is very much, we have a straightforward vision about like, how do we help people get to their next opportunity, right? Now the biggest thing in front of us right now is helping you get there first, helping you just see what all the opportunities are out there. Then the next thing might be like, hey, how can we help you like improve your resume? How can we help you with bookkeeping? How can we connect you to the service that already does it? There's no sense in like trying to be all things to all people. And then to Chuck's point before, and we're adamant about this, this is not social media. This is a utility. This is the Henry Rollins of like job search services,
Good old Hank. Yep. Let's ask this question. We regroup, a year from now to sit down and talk again in an environment just like we are today that people can watch or listen to. What do you see a year from now? What are your hopes of seeing, Posted, and where it goes and how it helps empower others who are really trying to find work?
Yeah, I'd love to see a lot more users on the platform, a lot more. I think the more that we're able to expand, the faster we're able to offer some of the things that George has been talking about. And I'd really like for us to expand into those other categories as well. HR, they are actually some of the most affected people in all of this. And the fact that they know what's going on when we start talking about community, their contribution to community could be that much more powerful. So I think expanding into categories like sales and technology, I think would be awesome. So yeah, and hopefully we have the community platform up and running, and we are able to start offering the beginnings of some of these services. But yeah, I think a year for something like this is actually quite a long time. We can make a lot of progress pretty quickly.
I'll build on what Chuck's saying about community, right? A year from now, it's really about creating a place where people are able to help each other. The functionality that we're creating is about giving you the tools to be able to do it, but ultimately it's about what are the opportunities where people can help each other. From small things like tagging something, saying, hey, this is a ghost job that they just keep popping up to keep you on their page. Like, red flag that for us so we can like pull it off, right? Give me a practical fishbowl, not one where you're telling me about how like the COO is like, you know, a pervert, or like they're, you know, they keep you working really late. But give me a practical one about, hey, this is the kind of work that you can expect. This is the kind of working environment, what this company is great at from a benefits perspective. You're interested in moving into a new area. How do I shift from marketing into healthcare, right? How do I make that jump? Put that question up. I think a lot of this is bringing together old school solutions for modern problems, right? Bringing back the message board in some ways. Just the classic, hey, I got a question. Who can answer this for me? And let someone like raise their hand and have the credibility to go, hey, this is it. When we looked around and we said, where are the models that we're looking at? We were taking a look at communities like Reddit that are self-regulated, right? In some ways, like creating those small pockets and communities when there was that early days of like what Blue Sky has started to become again, those early days of Twitter where you're like just straight up like, hey, here's some information that I'm sharing that I think I found really interesting and relevant in this particular area. Like, I don't need to hear about your latest like success story on LinkedIn and like, you know, page after page about your humble brag here, especially when people are hurting, right? Like, yay, great for you. Sorry, radio edit. But, you know, that in a year, I think is getting back to the humanity of it all, right? And like at its core, a place where we're just trying to help people figure out their next opportunity and get to it faster. Right now, we've got the foundation of the getting to it faster part. The other part is pulling the people together so that they can just help each other out. You know, we've all talked about the best connections you've ever got. This is the other side of like, no one's ever gotten a job from LinkedIn, but like every job that I've ever gotten in my career, every project, every client has been through someone has said, hey, George, I want you to meet this person. They're great. You're great. You guys go do something wonderful together. It's how the three of us came together, you know, and how do you start to set the stage for people to be able to have those kinds of human interactions again, online, offline, whatever it may be, but like, fueled and powered by a utility that helps you just like solve the basic foundational things, which is like, let me get you there faster. Now you're there. Y'all can figure out how to do it. An algorithm isn't going to do it better than people are. An algorithm isn't going to figure it out, like what you need better than yourself, you know, no matter what Silicon Valley tries to sell you.
My most important question, where do listeners go to sign up for this? Posted.Careers.
Yeah. And the name is everything, right? It's just like, look, here's what got posted. There's no pretense about like some fancy unicorn name before or after this. It's like, this is about your career. This is about your life. This is about what you want to do next, what you need to do today. You know, you got better things to do than to like sit there like checking the 25 companies you got tabbed on their career page. Just get up in the morning, open your email and go, oh, okay. You know, and if one of them is interesting, great. You know, and that's the hope. And the reality is by sending you 627 of them in the morning, there's a much higher likelihood that one of them is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's one thing that you want listeners to take away from our discussion today? Chuck.
I think the big takeaway is that we are really working to inject the human element back into this really crazy job atmosphere that we find ourselves in. We are trying to make sure that we're cutting away all the extra stuff that is just in the service of a platform, not in the service of the user. And I guess to reuse that word is service. So it's service oriented, it's a utility, it's not another social media platform. And yeah, I think those three elements are the spirit of the entire project so far.
Yeah, I'll say this to the audience. I'm not only just involved as a co-founder, I am also a client. I've gotten a couple of interviews from using the service. So that's my big takeaway is I feel like a lot of times people who build things never really use those things. They just build them because they want to become famous or wealthy. For me, I feel like, hey, this is a utility, to George's earlier point, for us to use as well. So, George, what's one thing you want listeners to take away?
I think every morning's a fresh start. You know, that for me is ultimately what I hope we can give people, which is, I've been through this process. You know, we all have, and it can make you feel beat down and frustrated and, you know, think you're a little less than yourself. And I think the opportunity in every morning to like wake up and go, okay, I got a fresh slate, I got a clean slate, and here's the fresh opportunities, the fresh postings that are there that I can take a look at, and I got my first run at them, right? And no matter how the rest of the day goes, each and every day that you're still stuck on this hunt, we can give you a fresh start. That you're not just like hoping someone calls you back or like following up for the 7th time and go, oh, do I follow up? Or am I going to start to bother them too much? Or do I look too desperate? Or am I not following up enough? You know, and it's like, look, there's the truth is there's so many opportunities out there, right? We've consistently been shocked at the sheer volume of postings that we're able to find every day.
Yeah.
And put in your inbox. 40 to 50 just in like market research, experiential, whatever it may be, right? Like 67 this morning, I think, in strategy jobs. And so if that for me has already like just changed the way that I look at the marketplace, the environment, going like, you know what, there will be another 60 jobs tomorrow, you know, and maybe none of them are right for me, but then the day after that there will be another like 60 to 90 roles. And so yeah, when you ask what do I hope is like the one thing people can take away from their experience with Posted, is just when you're in the thick of it, give you a clean slate every morning.
Excellent. George Gwynn, Chuck Heckman, Jeffrey Colon, co-founders of the service Posted.Careers. Thank you both for joining me here on Creative Studies.
Thanks, dude.
Thank you.
Living at today's non-stop pace, it's harder than ever to stay fresh.
Creative Studies. Studying is different in the 21st century. Creative Studies. Created by Jeffrey Colon in Seattle. All thoughts are his own. Check out our t-shirts and hoodies at creativestudies.store.